especially in the United States of America, more than anything has in my entire life, and I'm 75 years of age. I give this with fear and trembling. Now, you have had time to get your pencil and paper. If you didn't get them, it's your own fault. You're going to have to remember it. But please write this down, and then as I go through this, you are going to go and prove this, what the elite told me. I want you to write down a date. The date is November the 21st, 2002. You have it? November the 21st, 2002. Don't you dare change that dial. You stay right here on the Alex Jones Show through the entire time. You are going to be appalled at what you're going to hear. You can go after the show and prove this for yourself by going on the Internet and looking up what they told me. Did you hear that? I said they told me to go to this point and look it up, and I would know what was going to happen next, and I'm going to give it to you right now. On November the 21st of 2002, Mr. Ben Bernanke, who is today the chairman of the Federal Reserve, made a speech. I don't think anybody knew the importance of that speech. I never knew it. In fact, I didn't know it existed until about 2 weeks ago. And when I looked it up, I trembled, honestly. And he gave something in that speech that now you are having brought to you because they're clearing their conscience. I don't know any way to say it except men who are in their 70s and 80s were a part of the elite back when I knew them years ago and literally rubbed shoulders with them, lived with them for 3 years. Today, these men know they're facing eternity, and these old men are talking. And when you look up that date of November the 21st, 2002, and go to National Economist Club in Washington, D.C., and Ben Bernanke, who was not Federal Reserve chairman at that time, he still was just a governor, and at the time he made a speech to the National Economist Club in Washington, D.C. on November the 21st of 2002. Now, the reason I'm giving you that is because now I'm going to give you a brief background so that you will understand how I got this and why these people gave it to me. Many of you have heard me say before on the Alex Jones Show, and by the way, I'm trying to talk slow enough today so you can pick this up. Normally I go a mile a minute because I have so much to say, and I do have that much to say today, and you're going to be appalled. But right now you must get the details on this because there has nothing ever affected your life like this is going to affect you in your lifetime. So a little background briefly. Many of you have heard me say on the Alex Jones Show that when I lived with the elite for those 3 years, many years ago, and got to know some of them personally, they have a code of ethics. One of the first things I learned is not the code of ethics that Alex has, not the same code of ethics Lindsey Williams has, and many of you out there in the listening audience. Their code of ethics is not a code of ethics of the Scriptures and the Bible, as our founding fathers had. Their code of ethics is different, but one facet of their code of ethics is they must tell you before they do it everything that they're going to do. Now, Mr. Ken Fromm said to me back about I guess about 2 years ago before he died, he said to me one day, he said, Chaplain, when the Federal Reserve begins to buy their own securities, it's all over for the dollar. And at the time, I did not have the slightest idea of what the man was talking about because the Federal Reserve had not begun to buy its T-bills and securities that weren't bought by the foreign nations.
That's monetization of debt. Now they're monetizing close to 80% of it.
Yes. Now, in 1 year's time, they began this approximately 1 year ago, and Alex, you're right, that's monetization of the debt. And all they do is take it out of one pocket, put it in the other. 1 year ago, they began doing this, and as of right now, the Federal Reserve owns $3 trillion of the national debt. It is phony. It's a paper entry. It's a computer type. It is utterly unbelievable.
And the communist Chinese are the other big owners.
They only, as of right now, today, as far as we can tell, the Federal Reserve owns as much of the national debt as China does.
Yes.
China has bought our T-bills, it's bought our securities.
And it's their debt, but they're maneuvering us into it. So what was so important in this speech that your source directed you to?
Well, what he said to me was, he said, go to this particular place, and you will know exactly what they're going to do next. And this is what I want to give you right now. On that date of November the 21st, 2002, Ben Bernanke, who later became the chairman of the Federal Reserve. Now, what I was told was that the reason he became the chairman, this is so important, folks, he became the chairman of the Federal Reserve because of this speech. He said everything in this speech that the elite wanted to hear, and because he was the most likely to carry it out, because it seemed that he believed it. And when he gave this speech, it basically put him in as the chairman of the Federal Reserve, which he presently is. And in the speech, he told everything that he would do. Folks, please, everything he would do, I'm going to outline them for you. There are 5 points. Now, let me warn you ahead of time. When you go to the speech, it's very difficult to read. It's all bankers' jargon. What I have done is taken it and put it in simple terms that Lindsey Williams can understand and that I think you'll pick up on. And in the speech, he said that he would do 5 things. Let me tell you why, when he said he would do it. And again, let me go back and say, the elite said to me, go to this place.
I understand they're saying this is a key speech, so break it down.
Yes. Number 1, he said, if I am ever faced with another depression or another 19 and 29 to 19 and 32, 33, 34, 1929 to 33.
I will not restrict money supply. I will monetize it. Yeah.
Yeah, he said, number 1, he said, I will lower the interest rates to 0. Now, please read the speech, folks. Every one of you, you've got to go to that point and read it for yourself. It's pages long. I'm just giving you a synopsis.
No, I'm actually familiar with the speech, but I'm glad you mentioned this. So I figured this was an important speech, and I've seen the globalists quote it before. So that's obviously what your contact is doing, because this is the blueprint for what we're going under.
Yes, and my contact knew exactly what was going to happen next, and I don't have a date for it. I wish I did. But I'm going to give it to you. All right, number 1, he said, I would lower interest rates to 0. Well, you say it's a little above 0, 0.3, 0.4. Well, so what? For all practical purposes, when Ben Bernanke became the chairman of the Federal Reserve, he did exactly what he said in that speech in November the 21st, 2002.
And the reason that's such a big deal is, obviously, it means they're going to basically devalue the currency down to nothing. The decision has been made to kill the dollar as we know it, which will be a giant transfer of wealth from the people to the elite. Lindsey, stay with us. Let's come down and get to the rest of this key Bernanke speech straight ahead, and then phone calls for our guest at 800-25-9931. Folks, here's some of the big news at Infowars.com right now. TSA spot searches expands to Union Station. And I've seen newscasts out of Florida where you get off a train or a bus and they walk over and start sticking their hands down your wife and children's pants. We've played those newscasts here. And the reporters sit there with a straight face about how great this is. Again, they're not claiming somebody's trying to blow up trains. It's when you're getting off of them. It's just pure harassment. They're looking for drugs, ladies and gentlemen. It's all just training us. We've got my full-spectrum analysis on full-spectrum eugenics at Infowars.com. Iran promises to close down oil route if sanctions imposed. I remember back in early December, Lindsey saying it's not going to be this December, but it's coming up in 3 or 4 months. And who knows, they may be able to back it off and not start it, but it's just crazy. Lindsey, this is a short segment, and you're gracious to come back, and you've got some breaking news today, but I also want to go to some calls. But they're pointing out this Bernanke speech, and I'm glad that your elitist friend, former oil company CEO, is pointing you at this speech. During the break, I didn't try to go pull it up, but I think this is a speech he gave quite a bit. It's why he's known as Helicopter Ben. back in the early 2000s when he was lobbying to be chairman, as you pointed out, when he was only a governor on one of the Fed offices, real governor of America. That's how they run it. But this is important because it's the signal to debase the currency. Is that what your friend was pointing out?
Well, Alex, when we come to the fifth point, that's exactly what I'll say. But since this is a short segment, please let me give one thing here that I think is so important. It's very unusual that I'm on your show today. Now, please bear with me, folks, because this is providence, any way you put it. I have had, Alex, I have had no telling how many talk show hosts to call me recently and say you haven't been on a while. Would you please come on between Christmas and New Year's? I turned every one of them down. I did not want to give this until after the first of the year.
Oh, wow.
Because I had to do more research on it. Your producer called on yesterday to my office, and I was not here. And the person who answered the telephone, my wife, said, oh, sure, Lindsey will be glad to be on your show tomorrow. That's the only reason I'm here today. Otherwise, if
amazing. That is providence. That is providence. So, wow. So break down, because we see one of these speeches, we get some info from it, but a globalist knows how to decipher and all that weird banker language.
He does. And whenever you go to Ben Bernanke, we'll give it one more time, Ben Bernanke's speech on November the 21st, 2002, before the National Economist Club of Washington, D.C., read the entire speech, pages long, and he said, if I am ever faced with another Great Depression, he said, number one, I will bring interest rates to zero. Well, when he became Federal Reserve Chairman, and most people think because of that speech he gave back in 2002, they liked what he said so well. That's the first thing he did. Now, folks, please, you've got to remember what he did back then. When he first became Federal Reserve Chairman, he took interest rates to, and it's somewhere upon 0.2, 0.3 today for all practical purposes. He took it to zero, exactly what he said he would do. Number two, he said, I will buy securities from the banks to expand the federal balance sheets. Now, folks, you're going to have to go back and do some homework on this. I mean, you're going to have to do some research on your own when you read that man's speech. I read it once, I read it twice.
Yeah, that's massive corporate welfare. That is getting the people in debt directly to the banksters in a form of economic espionage.
He said, I will buy the securities. Do you realize what they did when they bought General Motors, what they did whenever they bought Chrysler? Do you realize what they're doing whenever they bail out all of the banks, every one of them?
They're nationalizing everything but keeping the power in the private corporations, just like with the EU takeover. They're making the banksters the government.
Yes, and he bought the securities from the banks to expand the Fed's balance sheet, to make it look good. Number three, and the closer I get to number five, the more afraid I get even giving this, but you've got to understand where it came from. He said, go and look this up, Chaplain, and you'll know what's going to happen next. Now, he has already lowered the interest rates to zero. He has already bought the securities from the banks to expand the Fed balance sheet. Number three, he said, I will increase the money supply. You don't have any trouble understanding what he did there. He just turned the presses up. They took out of the computers funny money that had no backing, no existence whatsoever. And over Christmas Day, folks, they're getting everything ready for number five. And I'll show it to you. Over Christmas Day, while you were having a good time partying, and I'm so glad George Washington realized years ago on Christmas Eve that the Hessians would be drunk.